Unprepared, uninspired, unacceptable. Dolphins humiliated by the Colts. Let's talk.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
There's a team that's in our hearts. We've got love that won't depart. We are always in the stands, 'cause we're super Dolphin fans. Football is mighty rough. Winning gets awful tough. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
Brain, I think both you and I could generously be described as people who were not super optimistic about what this season was going to bring for the Miami Dolphins. We weren't cynical enough to believe that only good things were possible for this team. But I don't know that either you nor myself were prepared for just how badly the Dolphins played on Sunday in Indianapolis. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I don't think either of us expected the Dolphins to be the worst football team in the league. And that's what they were on Sunday. They were the worst team in the league. No team in the NFL was as ill-prepared and performed as poorly as the Miami Dolphins did. And look, time will tell as far as who the Colts are, but it's not a juggernaut. It's probably not a playoff team. They're at best a mediocre football team. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll win that division because it's a bad division. Maybe they're going to be better than people expect. But the Dolphins just made Daniel Jones look like Peyton Manning. They made the Indianapolis Colts look like world beaters, and the Dolphins got completely destroyed in every aspect of the football game. They got out-coached, they got out-physicaled, they got out-schemed, they got out-efforted, if that's a word. Every aspect of that football game, the Colts were better than the Miami Dolphins. And if that's going to be the case, the rest of this season, if that's the way this team is going to show up, then it's going to be a long, long season. And the Dolphins are going to be one of the worst teams in football, if not the worst team in football.
Yeah, it was just an absolutely abject performance. And we're going to get into it on today's show. We're going to talk about it. We're not going to go beat by beat through everything, but we're going to let our opinions be heard, and we hope that you will as well in the comments below. Let us know how you are feeling right now. In fact, we're going to be doing our pulse check in just a moment. So let us know in the comments below. What is one word to describe how you feel right now about the Miami Dolphins? Let us know in the comments. But what I want to do right now is remind you, if you haven't done so already, to make sure you subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Smash this like button. Smash the like button right underneath this video if you're watching live on YouTube. If you're listening to us after the fact on podcast form, thank you very much. But when you get a chance, come on over to YouTube and hit subscribe to the channel and smash like on this video as well. Make sure you download, rate, review, and subscribe to the Same Old Dolphin Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere that you get your podcast. And make sure you're visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. It is your one-stop shop for all things Miami Dolphins. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you to check out Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com is the one-stop shop for all of your Miami Dolphins clothing, apparel, accessory needs. They got you covered, whether it's a hat, a jersey, t-shirt, shorts, roll of toilet paper, whatever it is, they're going to have you covered over there at caneswear.com. So head on over. The best and most affordable Miami Dolphins apparel on the internet is at caneswear.com. Caneswear.com. Brain, I want to start by revisiting a post that I put out on Blue Sky. By the way, make sure you're following me at Amplified to Rock on Blue Sky. I put this out shortly before the game on Sunday, which is, and I think it's a common refrain for us on this show at the beginning of every season, is that the NFL and people who cover the NFL are the kings and queens of overreacting to a small sample size. And so I think it is fair to say that you should never go over the top in terms of reacting to a single game in a vacuum. But something else that I have always said about this team is that the 2025 Miami Dolphins exist within the context of everything that has come before 2025. Up to and including the fact that this team hasn't won a playoff game since the Clinton administration. Up to and including the 4 years of Mike McDaniel and all of the years of Chris Grier. That is a lot to take in about this team, that this team has put us through over the last few years. The 2025 Miami Dolphins exist within the context of everything that has happened with the 24 Dolphins, the 23 Dolphins, the 22 Dolphins specifically. And there is a tendency in some circles to drill down on the micro and only look at the Dolphins team within a vacuum as they exist right now, and to say that they get a clean start and this is all brand new. And to a certain extent, it is true that the sample size of the 2025 Miami Dolphins is a single game. It's one single data point. And so in judging the 2025 Miami Dolphins as a whole, yeah, it's a small sample size. But when you look at the team as being run by Mike McDaniel, when you look at Mike McDaniel as a head coach, when you look at Chris Grier as a general manager, there is a large body of work there, a body of work from which you can draw much more conclusions. And when you look at this data point that week 1 of the 2025 season is, when you look at that data point and you stack it onto everything that came before in 2024 and 2023 and 2022, it becomes a bright red flag about the shortcomings in the upper tiers of this organization. When you have the same procedural problems, getting play calls in late, having players not understand the process, when you have a system that is so complicated that the quarterback for whom this system was built does not seem to have the ability to understand how its system is supposed to work, or perhaps, and we'll talk about this, maybe doesn't have the physical capacity to operate this system as it exists. When you put all of those pieces together, you have to look at it and you go, you know what? I don't think this system as it exists is sustainable. I don't think it's tenable. And we're going to have ourselves a very long season if this isn't an aberration of a game. And the body of evidence over the past few years suggests that this game was not an aberration, because it, in almost every conceivable way, looked like a direct continuation of where this team left off at the end of the 2024 season. And if this team just spent 8 months, it was 8 months from the end of that game when the Dolphins went into the Meadowlands and got their skulls kicked in by the New York Jets. 8 months between then and taking a trip to Indianapolis to get their skulls kicked in at the hands of the Indianapolis Colts. If you couldn't fix it in that time, how on earth are you going to fix it with 16 games left of your season? How are you going to fix it? I don't know the answer to that question. All I know, Brain, is that when some people, such as ourselves, when we were laying out the possibilities for this season, when we said that it is probably much more likely for this team to end up with 5 wins or fewer, 3 wins or fewer, when we've had that conversation, when we said that the path to that was much clearer than the path to this team winning 11 or 12 games or more, this is what we had in mind. This performance is exactly how a journey to 5 or fewer wins begins, because it's going to be really easy for the bad stuff to snowball, and it already has begun. Again, we'll get into that in a little bit. It's already begun to snowball. But it is very clear to me that that path to 5 or fewer wins, not only is it the clearer path, this team may have already begun down that road.
I can't argue with you. Look, like I said, they were the worst team in football on Sunday. They look a lot closer to a team that's going to have a top 5 pick than a team that's going to be challenging for a playoff spot. I'm at a loss for words with what we saw on Sunday, because, like you said, we didn't come in as the toxic positivity crowd. We didn't come in both of us picked the Dolphins to have a losing record. I was the positive one on the show, picking the Dolphins to go 8-9. This team, and my thought process was, this team looks like it's mediocre. It has some things that you feel good about. It has some things that you feel shaky about. And contextually, because like you said, this team is an extension of the 24 Dolphins, the 23 Dolphins, the 22 Dolphins, and, even to a lesser degree, the teams that were from 21 and 20, because ever since this team got blown up in 2019, this is the build. It's been a mediocre football team. And I said, look, there's one thing this team is going to do. They're going to find themselves to mediocre. And I may still be right about that. But if this team's going to end up being mediocre, they got a long way to go just to get to mediocre, because they are well below mediocre, because that team that just whooped their ass on Sunday, that's a mediocre football team. And they just destroyed you.
It is really embarrassing, is all there is to it. And as I suggested, this is a continuation. This is not, if there's one thing that I don't think anybody should be right now, it's surprised. Now, I know that there are people out there who have been, I don't know if they've bought in to the hype, or if they, or as Mike says, there are bad faith actors out there that are pumping up the positive hype because they're engagement farming, and they're trying to get everybody to buy in with the toxic positivity spins that they know are not true, but they're spinning it that way to keep you engaged. I don't know whether that is the case or not, but if there's one thing that nobody should be, as you look at this team, it's surprised. And we had so many people lining up to say that if anybody was talking about potentially catastrophic outcomes for the Dolphins this season, bad records for the Dolphins this season, you had this whole group of people that was calling them haters. And I had somebody send a post, skeet at me on Blue Sky, and they said, maybe the haters were right. And what I said to that person was, maybe the haters were not actually haters, but objective observers who were not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. Maybe they were people who were just looking at it and calling it as they saw it. And we've been saying this all along. I'm not taking victory laps. It's nothing like that. But we've been saying it the whole time. This roster is objectively worse than the roster was last year. That doesn't mean that this team is automatically going to end up with a worse record than last year. There's certainly paths, and we discussed them. There were always paths to this team outperforming last year's team, even though the roster is as a whole less than what it was last year. But every single one of those paths, every single one of those paths started out the same way. And all of them, every single path to this team having a big winning record or a better record than last year, every single path started the same way. If this team stays healthy. And guess what? Do you know how long this team was healthy? Well, first of all, they came into the game not healthy, right? The number one tight end that they signed in the offseason wasn't ready to play. So that's one. So you've got another Will Fuller / Odell Beckham on your hands here with this tight end. But then you have your starting 5 offensive linemen. Yes, we have the top offensive line ready to go. 4 plays. 4 plays. James Daniels goes down with a pectoral injury. Now, we're hearing it is not a worst case scenario. The muscle wasn't torn, but he is expected to miss 3 or 4 weeks. So you're already down your new big free agent signing for 3 to 4 weeks. You also have Austin Jackson, your starting right tackle, is dealing with some sort of toe injury. And we don't know if it's turf toe. We don't know if it's a broken toe. We don't know what the situation is. But it sounds like Austin Jackson is now staring down, missing time. Your starting cornerback, Storm Duck, is now staring at missing several weeks of time. The team is already not healthy. But the other thing that all of these predictions were predicated upon, all of the predictions of the Dolphins winning 10 games, 11 games, 12 games, whatever. And I have literally heard somebody predict the Dolphins were going to win 12 games this season. All of those predictions were predicated upon the idea that first Tua was going to stay healthy, but that he was going to be, when Tua is in there for the Dolphins, they're always going to win the games that they're supposed to win. Tua Tagovailoa, by all accounts, fully healthy Tua Tagovailoa, went out on Sunday against the Indianapolis Colts and played his absolute worst game as a pro. And there's all kinds of speculation whether he was doing it with some sort of head injury, although the fact that he was not announced to be in the concussion protocol today suggests that there was no head injury. But he certainly seemed to have problems making the plays and making the reads and putting the ball where it needed to be. Turned the ball over in bunches. Everything, all of these people were predicating their predictions upon Tua Tagovailoa being whatever the best version of Tua Tagovailoa is. And he was not that on Sunday. So, Brian, not only does this team go out and get embarrassed, but now they're dealing with injuries. And now there are even more questions surrounding the quarterback, because it used to just be that if he's healthy, he's going to be okay. And now you can't even make that assumption anymore.
Yeah, it looks like the opposing defenses are on to McDaniel. They're on to Tua. The whole thing this offseason was, look, we're gonna invest in the offensive line. We're gonna get better at running the football. The Dolphins didn't run the football well, and they didn't try to run the football well. And I understand that sometimes the game script gets away from you, but they just didn't run the ball. They ran the ball a total of 12 times in this game. Compared to 31 passing attempts. So if the idea was that they were going to run the ball, well, that they got, and I get it. Like, you turn the ball over twice in 3 plays, on your first 2 possessions. And before you knew it, you were already down 17-0, and that changes the way that you're going to call a game. But again, if the thing that's going to make this offense better is running the football, and you're going to give up on it in the first quarter or the second quarter of the game, and your offensive line is already shaky at best, and then 4 plays down, you lose your biggest free agent signing of the offseason in James Daniels, you would think they would try to implement a little bit more balance. But again, like it's not like It's not like the offense alone lost in this game. The defense did not make a stop the entire game against Daniel Jones.
That's right. Against Danny Dimes. Could not make a stop the whole game. So listen, we got a lot more that we need to dive into because I want to really dig into it with this head coach of ours here in a minute. But I want to start off. We're already 20 minutes into the show. I want to get into it here. Let's get in to checking our pulse.
Because we're another day closer to death.
I can't even do the old pulse check video anymore because we've moved on from check your pulse if you're not fired up. Because yeah, we're fired up now, but we're not fired up the way that you want us to be, Mike McDaniel. And we are another day closer to death. We're another day closer to the death of this head coach's tenure at the Miami Dolphins. We're another day closer to that. But this is pulse check time, everybody. So here's how it works. We ask you for one word to describe how you feel right now about the Miami Dolphins. So let us know in the comments, how are you feeling right now? If you want to make sure that your comment is in the air, we're accepting the super chats as well. So go ahead and send those in. In fact, we've already received a super chat from Patrick Mullen, who says a sad end to Cope Week. Worst Cope Week ever. Yeah, it was pretty much the worst Cope Week we've ever experienced. Brain, I'm going to let you go first. How is your pulse right now?
I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed by the performance that my favorite team put out there on Sunday. I'm embarrassed by the effort. I'm embarrassed that the offense couldn't put up a point against the Colts until the fourth quarter. I'm embarrassed that Tua Tagovailoa looked like not even a starting NFL quarterback out there. I'm embarrassed that this team that spent the entire offseason trying to beef up their interior offensive line so that they can run the ball better, couldn't run the ball. That this offensive line that they invested in by bringing in James Daniels and trading up to draft Jonas Savaiinaea and convincing everybody that they didn't need to invest any further into it, had Tua Tagovailoa running for his life and sack stripped in this game. I'm embarrassed that a defense that we knew had its holes could not get even one stop against a Colts offense led by Daniel Jones. And this was not just a Colts offense led by Daniel Jones. It was a Colts offense that, because they were dominating the football game and ahead by so much, literally had taken their foot off the gas in the second half. And the Dolphins still couldn't stop them. I'm embarrassed by the effort. I'm embarrassed by the coaching staff and how ill prepared they were. That there was just guys not knowing not knowing where they were supposed to be, mental errors, physical errors. The team just looked completely out of sorts, not prepared, not ready to play a game. And they made Shane Steichen look like Bill Belichick, and they made Daniel Jones look like Peyton Manning. But above all of that, I'm embarrassed in myself. I'm embarrassed that I thought this team was even going to be decent, that this team even had a chance. I get that it's 1 week, but it's not just 1 week. The things that we have seen, the things that we saw in week one are the same things that we've been seeing from this team for 3 years. And there is no reason to believe that it's going to get significantly better. Do I think they'll play better than they played this Sunday? Yeah, I think it's kind of hard not to. But I don't think they're going to play appreciably better to the point where we're going to look back at this season when all is said and done and say, this was a really good season. And Chris Greer should be lauded for the team that he put out there. And Mike McDaniel should be lauded for the great job he did in coaching these guys up. You're right. I don't want to overreact to 1 week, but I don't think it's an overreaction at this point. I'm done with the positivity and even thinking that this thing could go right, that there is a pathway to this team being a playoff team. This team is not a playoff team. This team is not going to be close to a playoff team. And at this point, I'm not opposed to it going completely off the rails and it being a tank season. Because at the end of the day, this team finding its way to 6 or 7 wins because they really try hard and they want to hang on to guys and not be sellers at the trade deadline in a couple months, it'd be the worst thing that could happen to this team. This team needs a hard, long look at the mirror. And I'm not talking about the players, although they need to look in the mirror as well as professionals and play harder and better. But I'm talking about the front office. I'm talking about from the top down. I'm talking about Stephen Ross. I'm talking about Chris Greer. And I'm talking about Mike McDaniel. And I'm talking about Anthony Weaver. If this thing doesn't get appreciably better here, Mike McDaniel is the odds-on favorite to be the first coach fired this year. And most people, when you ask, well, when's that going to happen? You think he's going to make it to this date, this date, this date? They look at that game in Barcelona, in Spain against the Commanders. That's in mid-November. If the Dolphins play like this next week and lose to the Patriots, they're going to be 0-2. They're going to get their doors blown in by the Bills, and they're going to fall to 0-3. And then they're going to have a 10-day rest. If they don't beat the Patriots on Sunday, Mike McDaniel isn't making it out of September.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, honestly, Brain. And I think you're right to feel embarrassed. I want to share some of the other pulse checks that we've gotten. And shout out to everybody watching us live on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Also, a special shout out tonight. Be remiss if I didn't do this. Give a shout out to Carlos Hernandez running the I Am a Miami Dolphin Fan Facebook page. Shout out to all of our friends watching us over there. All of the friends watching us on the Same Old Dolphins Show Facebook page. Thanks to everybody for watching us and everybody tuning in live on Twitter as well. We've certainly gotten some responses to the pulse check question. I'm going to start, as always, with our friends who put in their answers over in the Dolphins Talk Extra Discord. You can also join the Dolphins Talk Extra Discord if you want to join in on the fun at patreon.com/Dolphins Talk for as little as $3 a month. We're going to be having a lot of fun over there all season long, regardless of what the Dolphins do on the field. But here are some of the pulse checks that we got there. From NDA Zone, he says betrayed. Timbo is disillusioned. Al Craig 23 says frauds. Fish Pilot says apathetic. Dolphins 618 says despondent. Patrick Mullen says clarity. Yeah, clarity makes a lot of sense as well. Let's take a look at some of that we've got here in the live comments. Actually, before we do the live comments, we'll check out some of the Blue Sky comments. Alex is unsurprised. Hockey Chick 6 says shit. John says trash. J.A. apathetic. Mike McDingle is despondent. Eddie S. is sick. David Keith is hopeless. Robin Ottawa says bleak. Rich is loathsome. German Space Interpreter says treadmill. Rich Miller expected. Brian says pathetic. Somerset Tim says dead. No pulse. The Real Big Dumbass says deflated. Mackenzie says bleak. Yeah, I hard to disagree with any of these. Let's take a look at some of the folks that are watching along live. David DeGraffenreid says angry. Anthony Lombardo on Facebook is fatigued. Jack Vogler says horrible. Nick Stanton deja vu. Eric Finsfand is embarrassed. Joe Stevenson says trash. 90 MFC acceptance. Ben Gardner embarrassed. Jordan Murray flatline. Jed Dubois flabbergasted. Victor Spotlow inept. Ben Jones disappointed. A lot of disappointed here. Denise Marie embarrassed. Jonathan Colazzo disappointed. Yeah, I get all of those things. All of those words make perfect sense to me. But for me, my term, I'm disgruntled. And I'm going to tell you why I'm disgruntled. To give you a sense of why, I'm going to put an image on the screen. And I want everybody to read along with me. If you're watching live on YouTube, What you see before you is a comment, a statement that was put out by chairman of the board, managing general partner, Stephen M. Ross, at the conclusion of the 2024 season. He says, I want to thank the players and coaches for their hard work throughout the 2024 season, as well as the fans for their support. As the owner of this team, I am ultimately accountable for our successes and failures. We fell short of our expectations this season, and I understand and share in the frustration in our performance on the field. As we now look towards 2025, our football operation will continue to be led by Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel with my full support. Their positive working relationship is an asset to the Dolphins, and I believe in the value of stability. However, continuity in leadership is not to be confused with an acceptance that status quo is good enough. We will take a hard look at where we have fallen short and make the necessary changes to deliver our ultimate goal of building and sustaining a winning football team that competes for championships. Let me read that one more time, just that last sentence. We will take a hard look at where we have fallen short and make the necessary changes to deliver our ultimate goal of building and sustaining a winning team that competes for championships. A winning team that competes for championships. This team is legitimately worse than last year. Not only has status quo would be an improvement upon what we got on Sunday from the Miami Dolphins. The status quo would have been an improvement. This was abject failure. Now, I know it's one game, but it is a continuation of the same failed nonsense that we were asking these questions before the 2024 season started about this head coach and this general manager. We were asking these questions. And since then, the head coach continues to just tread water. The league has caught up to him, and he has not yet figured out a way around it. And the general manager, well, I mean, the general manager was signing players this year just to fill out a roster, not to build a contender. This team took a step back, and he said it so himself in his press availability, that this team is taking a step back. This team is resetting. And here we are. Now, a single game into 2025, an absolutely embarrassing showing from the Miami Dolphins. And I am disgruntled. Why am I disgruntled? Because every bit of this was predictable. You could see it coming. And while, again, I know it's just one game in the grand scheme of things in the 2025 season, but it is such a It was such a smooth connection. It is so easy to connect the dots from where we were last season to where we were in week 1 of 2025 that the only conclusion that I can draw is that this is not going to get better. Now, it might get moderately better from the perspective of I don't know how much worse it could have gotten from this week 1 performance. But as I look at this team right now, I see absolute failure from recruiting talent to cohesive vision for a team to the ability to progress as a head coach. All of it is a problem. And of course, it all comes back to the fact that the owner is the one who enables this nonsense to take place. The fact that the owner stood and watched everything that happened in 24 and stepped back and said, you know what? This is okay for now. We're going to keep these guys here. I'm going to remain loyal to these guys so that we can do it again next season. That is a problem. And that is why I'm disgruntled. So that's our pulse check. Bryn, here's where we are. It's, let's talk about Mike McDaniel here a little bit, because I think we've got to. Brain, at some point when you're a head coach, you've got to learn from your mistakes. We've asked these questions about Mike McDaniel, right? When is he going to get better? And we just still have not seen it. I mean, it's just at what point, and I think this is one of the interesting things that came out on Monday from, well, we saw a little bit of it in the press conference on Sunday after the game, where Mike McDaniel said he tried to prepare the players, and he had thought he saw preparation. He thought he saw players getting it right, but when it was time for game time, it wasn't there. That was a familiar refrain that we've heard before. Then on Monday, you've got Mike McDaniel throwing players under the bus, specifically throwing Zach Sealer under the bus and calling him out for a mistake that he made on the field. Now, we've heard Mike McDaniel speak at length about how, he thought that players understood the process and players knew what they were supposed to be doing, and they drilled things and they worked things and they practiced things and they got it to where they needed to be. But it's the same thing. It's the same players making the same mistakes. It's Tyreek Hill in the wrong place on the field. It's can't get people lined up correctly. Can't get the play calls in on time. It's the whole process over and over again. It's the same crap that we've been seeing for years and years and years with this head coach. And now he's here, he's trying to put the blame on his players. But when the same mistakes are made over and over and over again by the players, that leads me to the following question, Bryn, and maybe you can answer this. At what point does it cease to be a problem with the students and become evident that it is a problem with the teacher?
It's always a problem with the teacher. It's always a problem with the teacher. And like you said earlier, it's very easy. A lot of people will get lost in the micro and say, this went wrong because this player was in the wrong spot. And this player made a mistake on this play, or this player made a mistake on this play. It is a grander, if you back up and you take a wider view of this, what you have is the Dolphins consistently make a lot of mistakes. They consistently are not a fine-tuned operation. And I'm not at practice. I'm not going to tell you that they don't drill these things, but I'm going to tell you that I watched the Baltimore Ravens, and I watched the Buffalo Bills, and I watched the Kansas City Chiefs. And okay, maybe those teams are outliers because they're the best teams in the league. Watch the Pittsburgh Steelers. I watch these teams that have coaches that have been there for a while, and these teams are consistently prepared, consistently have a game plan, and have a structure about them, and don't consistently just shoot themselves in the foot. Players are going to make
mistakes. Can I interject real quick, Brain? Can I just interject for 1 second? You don't need to look to the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens to execute a game plan. You know where you can look?
The Indianapolis Colts.
The Indianapolis fucking Colts!
Yeah. The Indianapolis Colts came in with a game plan, and they executed it, and the Dolphins could not stop it. They had no answer for it. They were not prepared for it in any way. And they were completely lost. And it's not like the Indianapolis Colts came out there and played some, like mind-blowing football and revolutionized the game. No. All they did was they ran some play action early. They got it to their playmakers in space. And they relied on the Dolphins' defense not being where they were supposed to be. And then when the Dolphins had the ball, every now and then they threw a blitz. Dolphins couldn't pick it up, so it was a turnover. Even when they didn't blitz, Tua decided, hey, I'm just going to throw it right at the defender. I'm just going to throw it right at Leatu. I'm staring him down. Just going to throw it right at Leatu Latu. Like, yeah, that's not on McDaniel, but the grand scheme of things, the wide scope of it all, these things, when they continue to happen over and over and over again, and your students are not learning their lessons and are not progressing, that is on the teacher. So that is on the coach. And ultimately, when your GM hired both the teacher and the students, it's really on the GM. So
Yes.
it's top down. It's all a mess. There's really not a whole. I'm not like. We're gonna say a lot. It's only one game. We're gonna preface a lot by saying it's only one game. I don't want to hear anybody say, relax, it's only one game, and don't worry about it. It's gonna get better. Because the fact is, we've seen this for 3+ years now, and it's the same shit, different day. And there's no reason to think that if there aren't major changes made in not just game plans, not just players, but in the entire front office, that we're not just looking at 16 more games of this, but we're probably looking at 2 more years of same old Dolphins.
For those of you who are not watching on YouTube, you will see that I am wearing a t-shirt this evening that says #Fire Greer. Aaron the Brain is wearing a t-shirt that says Same Old Dolphins. Both t-shirts available, by the way, at the links in the show description. So go ahead and pick those up. You can also head to dolphinstalk.com if you would like to purchase your very own Fire Greer or Same Old Dolphins t-shirts. We got another super chat from Patrick Mullen. $5 super chat. Thank you very much, Patrick. He says, how many of the ifs are already nopes after this game? Well, as we mentioned, so many ifs to start the season. All of the ifs. Everything was a hypothetical. Everything was based on if they can stay healthy. If. And we've already seen that is not going to happen. It can't happen. That seems to be incapable of happening. So it's a bad time to be a Dolphin fan. Brain, I mean, do we want to get into Tua Tagovailoa and his shortcomings in this game? Do we want to get into, I mean, one of the other things that all of the things were predicated upon on this season was that if this pass rush is as good as it can be, but this pass rush for the most part was pretty tame in this game. It was equalized pretty effectively by the Indianapolis Colts. And I don't know if that is a sign of things to come. Maybe these guys aren't quite as good as we thought. Maybe Bradley Chubb is kind of washed. I don't know.
If we want to start at the pass rush didn't have a great game, obviously. But I think a lot of it, this is where I will give Indianapolis some credit and Shane Steichen some credit. They had a really nice game plan to start the game. The game plan was, we're going to neutralize the Dolphins' edge rushers and their defensive line and their aggressive defensive line by running play action, getting our playmaker, Tyler Warren, open in space because he's lined up against, edge rushers and linebackers, and they're biting on the play fake. And now Tyler Warren is free in the flat. You do that a couple of times, and now all of a sudden those edge rushers, they gotta respect it. They gotta wait and see what they're gonna do before they're a little bit timid. Being able to just pin your ears back and go after the quarterback has to be earned. It has to be earned by early down defense, and it also has to be earned by complementary football. You're able to do that more when you're able to make the opposing offense one-dimensional. If you're able to play with a lead, you're able to get after the quarterback more. If you're on your heels the whole time and you're afraid to bring pressure because your secondary can't cover anybody. I mean, like, unreal how many plays the Colts had second or third and long, and wide receivers are wide open. Just wide open. Just unreal how bad and how unprepared to play a football game this Miami Dolphins defense was. And so, like, look, Anthony Weaver has a tough task because that secondary is full of a bunch of guys that probably shouldn't even be on NFL rosters, let alone, starting in an NFL game. But at the end of the day, your job is to prepare these guys to play a football game. They're pros. That was just a completely ill-prepared secondary. And to me, that was the story of the defense, and that made everything that the front seven wanted to do almost impossible, because you always say, well, the best friend of a secondary is a front seven that can put pressure on the quarterback, but they work in tandem with each other. If your secondary, it just is giving guys free releases and they're wide open 5 to 10 yards down the field before there's even 2 seconds, I don't care who your pass rushers are, you're not stopping anybody.
Right. So it was a pretty embarrassing effort from the Dolphins defense, and I'm just not sure where they go to fix it, because now they're even down their starting cornerback. It was a mess. And then on the offensive side of the ball, what about Tua Tagovailoa, Brain? What are we going to do with this quarterback? There are field generals. There are players who you trust implicitly to go out there and put the game in their hands and to grab the game by the scruff of the neck, even in games where things are not going their way, that they're going to grab that game with both hands and they're going to say, no, we're going to do things, and we're going to do things right. Tua Tagovailoa is not that quarterback. He does not typically have that ability to do that. And what we saw today is that he is missing targets. He is missing players badly with throws. He seems to have lost. I mean, this was not a guy with a very powerful arm, and his arm seems to have lost a tick or two. Is that related to the injury that he was dealing with at the tail end of last season, left him out? Perhaps. And there's nothing we can do about it but speculate. But I don't think you could say speculating about it is unfair. I mean, I frankly don't think the speculation about whether or not he had actually suffered a concussion in that game is unfair, because we have seen before several examples of this player suffering an injury and then a head injury and then having his play fall off because of it. So it's not unfair to speculate upon that. But when you've got a quarterback who is otherwise, to be considered to be 100%, to have him go out and play this poorly, to be the guy that is supposed to be the most valuable player on your offense, the guy the entire offense is built around, to have him be unable to function at that level is a significant problem. And it is yet another ingredient that could lead this to be a truly disastrous season for the Miami Dolphins. Because again, every story about every prediction about how this team was going to go on and have a good season, everything was predicated on not only Tua being healthy, but Tua playing at the highest possible level. And is this the highest possible level that Tua is capable of playing at? Because if it is, it's not much of a step up from Zach Wilson or Snoop Huntley or Skylar White or anybody else. It's truly, truly terrible. And it is, if you're the Miami Dolphins, I think it's pretty worrying at this point.
Look, I think we should be worried. The big throw that, to me, that there were two throws that were especially disappointing, and I'm not even including the interception to Latu, in what was that, the third quarter of the game. To me, the two that were the most concerning was the first interception to Tyreek Hill, because that's the money play. That's the play that Tua made his money off of, that this offense made its hay on, was Tyreek Hill on an in route, Tua anticipating it, putting the ball exactly where it needed to be, and then that's like a 20-yard reception in the middle of the field. He completes that pass, and the offense is cooking, and you're in the red zone, and we're talking about trying to tie the football game up early in the game. He sails that throw. It's an interception. It's not a good look, but it happens. And so I'm willing to say, okay, it happens. But there was another throw, and I think it was in the third quarter of the game. It might have been in the fourth quarter of the game. It was the out route to Malik Washington on the sideline, and where Malik couldn't get his knee down. So it ended up being out of bounds. That ball hung up there for what seemed like for days. And the zip on the passes just wasn't there. And that was a clean pocket throw. Look, it's a fair point to say, well, he was under duress a lot of the game and he didn't have a lot of clean pockets. And so if this is a guy who doesn't have the strongest arm to begin with, can't really step into it, then the ball is going to look like it's lacking some velocity. But on those two specific throws, he had clean pockets, was able to step into it, and did not put the ball where it needed to be, when it needed to be, or throw it as hard as it needed to be thrown. It's just a couple of throws. I think the sample size is too small to definitively say anything, but it's a fair point to be worried about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Brain, oh my goodness. So where do we go from here? First of all, we got another super chat here from Rainier Cavedo. Thank you, Rainier. It says, if Mike does not want to get fired by week 4, he needs to give up play calling. My opinion, it was a horrible game. I don't disagree. I think a part of the problem that the Dolphins are having with their process and their procedure is that it is unnecessarily complex what this team is trying to do. Look no further than the 2-point conversion. You're wasting a freaking timeout because you can't get a play call in for your 2-point conversion. Just completely unacceptable. And that's on the head coach. So where do we go from here? We're going to turn the page because we have to. You got another game coming up. You got a home game coming up against the New England Patriots on Sunday afternoon. And I'm not sure. I mean, I think the only thing that you've got going for you is that you have a New England Patriots team that is trying to figure out what it is. And in some ways, I think you've got the Miami Dolphins trying to figure out who they are as well. And so that's, I think, the only, positive as you look ahead is that at least you're going up against the New England Patriots on Sunday, and you're not going up against, another. I mean, I guess I don't know what I'm even trying to say. Like it's all cope at this point because it's not like the Indianapolis Colts were a team that we were afraid of, and they just wiped the floor with us.
Look,
So
at the end of the day, like you got to turn the page because like you just have to. You got another game. So what does this team need to do? It's not a definitive answer from an X's and O's standpoint. It's not this player needs to play better. This team needs to have a fantastic week of preparation. This team needs to approach this next week like their jobs are on the line. And there needs to be urgency, and there needs to be physicality, and there needs to be sharpness. And this team needs to go out and play like a competent football team that is playing for their livelihoods. I'm not saying that they're going to win because I don't know. I don't have very much faith in this team right now. I would have told you for sure. I think that they're going to win their home opener against a Patriots team that's still learning. If you'd asked me that a week ago, I would have said for sure that's a win. But at this point, there's no for sure wins with this team. Not one on any given Sunday you can play as poorly as this team just played on Sunday. There is no sure win. So I can't promise that they're gonna win. I can't promise that they're gonna do anything different. But what I'm saying is what this team needs to do, if it's going to get better, is they need to completely own what happened, not just brush it under the rug and say, oh, that was a bad game, burn the tape. That whole expression, burn the tape. No. The only thing that should be burned is the tape into their eyeballs because they've watched it so much and it has made them nauseous. They should be like the guy from A Clockwork Orange watching the fucking game film. Their eyelids should be pried open And they should have to watch it on repeat over and over and over again till the point gets made and it's driven home, so that when they have to go to work on whether it's Tuesday or Wednesday, they come in ready to actually work and be ready to prepare for an NFL football game. Because whatever the hell they were doing for however many weeks prior to that game on Sunday, they were not in any way, shape, or form prepared to play an NFL football game, and it showed.
Yeah, it was absolutely pathetic. But you know what is not pathetic? Making picks with my bookie. Because listen, your fantasy league pays bragging rights while my bookie pays cash. You've done the research, you've made the picks, you've put your roster together, and maybe you've even won your week 1 fantasy matchup. Aaron the Brain is likely to beat me in week 1 of our fantasy matchup, although it's not guaranteed. Saturday, it's college chaos. Sunday, it's NFL insanity. And with my bookie, you've got every angle covered. Spreads, player props, live bets, and the ones you only whisper about until they hit. The setup seamless. You got one account, one wallet. You bet your game, you play some blackjack, and you reload without ever leaving the app. And if you're new to my bookie, use our code DOLPHINS at mybookie.com, and any bet you choose all the way up to $500 is fully covered. So you make your play, and if it doesn't hit, you get that $500 right back if you opt in using your bet back bonus token. This isn't fantasy. This is the real season. Let's cash with my bookie. That is going to be a wrap on this episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show. We will be back in your ears later this week to look ahead to the New England Patriots game. But until then, make sure you're following us. Smash the like button on this video. Again, if you're watching it live, as soon as we go off the air, hit refresh real quick and hit like one more time. If you haven't yet, leave your pulse check in the comments. We want to hear from you. Want to hear how you're doing. Make sure you're visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. Make sure you download, rate, review, and subscribe to the Same Old Dolphin Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere you get your podcast. Make sure that you head on over to Dolphins Talk Extra at patreon.com/Dolphins Talk for additional content that we got coming your way. And of course, make sure, as ever, to take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time, go Dolphins!
Fire everybody.